Welcome to In Depth, your weekly podcast from Press Xpress about news and newsmakers from India, Bangladesh, and beyond. We bring you an in depth look at the top stories that are making headlines. I'm Tulika, your host from Delhi. Never before has BRICS gotten so much attention, and that too on a global scale. We just saw the 15th summit being held in the city of Johannesburg in South Africa this week, and it was attended by the top leaders and officials from the core countries of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, as well as many other participants. The most notable outcome being the addition of six new countries to the group. But why is BRICS becoming so important now? And will it really impact the future of the trading world as we know it? To talk more about this and to give us some interesting insights, I have two experts joining me from Delhi and Dhaka in today's episode as we ask, how will BRICS impact the future of the trading world? So, first up, I'd like to introduce Professor Rajiv Ranjan. He's a professor at the Department of East Asian Studies at Delhi University and an expert in international relations and Chinese politics. Welcome, Rajiv.
Thank you, Tulika, for having me.
Great. So, a lot of the Western media have recently described BRICS as a talking shop, a so called group, and even a loose association of emerging economies. Why this dismissive attitude?
You are right that the Western media and scholars are extremely dismissive of the very idea of a BRICS. Ironically, it was James O'Neill that saw potential in these emerging economies and coined the very term. Prior to this summit in Johannesburg, we have seen that there are many rumors coming that even the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, will not participate this time. But he went there and participated in the summit. Now, for me, I see this as a part of negative discourse to divide the grouping of any particular significance. And we have seen whenever there is a rising countries, like emerging countries, the established one try to not to provide any platforms. And I see it in this way.
Well, on that note, I'd like to bring in my next guest, Dr. Delwar Hossain. He's a professor at the University of Dhaka and an expert in international relations with more than 30 years of experience in this area. He has a keen interest, especially in the areas of international cooperation and development. He's joining us from Dhaka. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to start by asking you this. Bangladesh had formally applied to join BRICS in June, and there was a general sentiment of excitement about this in the country. Why couldn't it make it to the list?
Thank you again. Well, there were about 40 countries who expressed interest to join BRICS, and then formally 22 countries applied, and Bangladesh was one of them. And this is important. I mean, to think that Bangladesh interest with BRICS is not very new. I mean, Bangladesh is one of the original members of New Development Bank. Bangladesh has been working very closely with all the members of BRICS group. And for Bangladesh, BRICS goes with foreign policy of Bangladesh that is based on non-alignment, that is based on promoting independent and balanced
Yes.
position in the world. And we have our foreign policy principle, which is based on friendship to all, allies towards none.
That is kind of, sorry, I'm sorry to cut in, but that is kind of contradictory, isn't it? Like you rightly said, Bangladesh has very strong relations, especially some of the core countries of BRICS are Bangladesh's largest trading partners.
I don't agree with your observation that it is contradictory. BRICS doesn't say that it is an alliance. BRICS is not a platform that promotes sort of the kind of confrontation or any kind of conflict with the West. It is the West who actually tries to explain to see BRICS as sort of counterpart or kind of a force that might reduce its influence. Rather, countries who have become the members of BRICS or who have been invited, you might see policies of some countries are rather in the line that they have relations with countries not much on the independent line or
I
non-aligned
agree.
line.
So rather a kind of contradiction is what you can see there in the new countries that are coming. And that changing equation is something that we will talk about. But let's also bring in China here. Rajiv, to go back to what Dr. Delwar was saying, he said that, 40 countries had shown interest, 22 applied, 6 eventually made it. And a lot of them have strong trading connections with China. Is it seen as a big victory for China, this expansion?
Oh, well, I don't think this is a true kind of like analysis of what the expansion tells us. Like, even this attitude that this is a victory or expansion for victory for China, I don't think this attitude, like, it's just underestimates India's connection and the bond with the coming members.
Well,
And
not
even this,
not to compare with India. Sorry. Just one small point. China is known for pushing this expansion for many years. So you're the China expert here. So not to compare with India, but it's more like something like 1 point down for China here.
yes, but as you have mentioned that these all members have signed the Belt Road Initiative Agreement, but we have to also keep in the fact that these all new members except Ethiopia have also a strategic partnership with India. So I would not say that this is kind of like exaggerating China's outreach. I would say that if you say that this is the win for the only for China, I don't buy this argument. I think that this is also a very good indicator that India is, because the whole membership is not that China wants to bring any new members and it will be able to do that, because it's need consensus for all the countries. So I think it's both rising China and emerging India both are trying to push their influence or their kind of
Okay.
like activity in the Middle
Okay.
East. I would say that.
But well, between Saudi Arabia and Iran, it was China which really took the lead. But the Middle East part is really interesting. When you have these 4 countries here, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, and Iran, all are from Middle East. So it's the addition of new members is really very Middle East centric, isn't it? And 2 of them are the world's largest energy suppliers. What does it tell you about the future of the trading within this grouping and on a larger context?
Look, like as you have mentioned that this by inducting the new members, this what will be known as now the BRICS plus most probably has now more energy rich countries, and that is definitely going to change the game. It will boost, but at the same time it's going to boost the energy security and cooperation among members, among the BRICS plus. For example, like India will be exploring more connection with others energy rich countries, right? Because you have now one platform where you can share and talk about your needs and kind of like cooperations. This another fact is like with this BRICS plus, the 40 for around 44% of global oil reserves now it belongs to this membership, whereas the G7, which has set the norms for global governance for many years, has only now 3.7% of the global reserves, right? So what we see here is that within this grouping, we have seen that Russia-Ukraine war has led to uh, localization of trade. I would say that where you are the members country are
Yes,
trading in their own local currencies,
own
but
currencies.
yes, but I would not say that this will lead to de-dollarization. In fact, that will push to kind of like internalization of RMB. I would say that because it's in fact like what we have to do that this internationalization of Chinese yuan will have not like many countries, BRICS country will not be agree. So what we are looking at this maybe BRICS plus will come with a new BRICS currency that we can kind of see that like what the European experiences tell us. But
Okay, okay.
given
Well,
that
BRICS
European
Plus is a very interesting term you've coined. A lot of analysts are also calling it BRICS plus OPEC. considering the energy angle to it. But Chinese yuan is a very interesting thing that you've mentioned. And China already has been pushing the expansion of its currency, at least in the regional trade, in the US as well, for the last 15 years. It definitely seems to be maybe not a very permanent thrust, but it definitely seems to be a growing clout for the Chinese yuan here.
It would take time to kind of like to RMB becoming a kind of like settlement currency also for at an international level. So that there are some structural problem also that we have to see that. And at the same time, it's although that RMB has become the one of the SDR of IMF, but I would say that India is also pushing for a kind of like internationalization of its rupees, right? So it would not be an easy cake for Chinese to walk in. I would say that, and members country will not be agreeing on that replacing one hegemonic dollar to kind of like by the another dominant Chinese yuan, right? So I would say that it would be a kind of like accepted currency, and I think in this way it will be a kind of like the new development bank, we might see a kind of like new currency, a BRICS currency. Who knows, right?
So maybe making space for a non-US dollar kind of a payment system, an alternative currency system, to take more space in this. But Dr. Hussain, I'll come to you now. And local currency is something we'll talk about later, but I want to ask you also about the non-Western nature of the bloc that you mentioned earlier. And do you think it's really going to stand up to global dominance and Western dominance?
No, these dominance, these groups. When we talk about non-Western, it is basically to give some kind of identity. It doesn't mean that they want to challenge the dominance. It is actually based on two cardinal principles. One is equity, and second is inclusivity. We want a global order, we want a global system, we want a global society where actually every country should have their access, their presence in a way that they would not be deterred or hindered by the structural factors. It is not to challenge the West. It is the West. They might see some difficulty in the rise of other countries or in the unity, and that kind of understanding we saw even in the 70s when there was a discussion about the new international economic order. The West was in a sort of discomfort position. So to me, actually, BRICS or BRICS Plus or any kind of groups in the world, they are to solve their problems. What the West has solved 50 years ago or 100 years ago.
So one of your main observations is that it's not a challenge to the Western dominance, although they might look at it that way. But from the BRICS grouping point of view, it's more like inclusivity and also a move to maybe avoid Western sanctions that tend to disrupt business as usual. But when it comes to standing up to the Western dominance, and when we talking about local currencies earlier, is it also a move to dethrone the US dollar?
You see, I have a very different observation about it. If you put the issue of de-dollarization, it was actually very strongly, heavily started by euro. When euro was introduced, it was the real challenge to dollar, and we don't talk about it. And now what India or China or some other countries are trying to use their currencies in a very limited scale. We are talking about de-dollarization. I think de-dollarization started much earlier, and since European Union is very much.
And why do you think we don't talk about it?
I don't see much, because I read different journals, different magazines, newspapers. There is very less engagement on this issue, how euro actually challenged dollar. It is actually, people are arguing that rupee is challenging, yuan is challenging, or even if BRICS, we don't know, but if BRICS Plus introduces a currency in future, there will be huge high and cry that, it is challenging dollar and it is going to harm so much. No, actually, euro challenged it first.
Rajiv, I want to come to you about unity. Look at equations within BRICS Plus. China, India have competing visions. Now there is Saudi Arabia, Iran. Do you see disagreements and divisions becoming a challenge?
Look, like as Professor Hossain has rightly pointed out that like nobody talks about when euro came into existence and it has challenged
Hmm.
in a way, right? Dollar, as you have mentioned that there is a problem with Chinese and Indian vision. I think every country has its own vision, right? Professor Delwar
Hmm.
said and it comes because there are sovereign nations, right? Now, instead of having a kind of like uh, what you have unipolar world or bipolar world, we are moving toward a kind of like a home theater, I would say, that everyone wants to watch its own movies rather than forced to watch in what the Hollywood or the Bollywood or the
Okay.
Chinese movie, right? So I would say that no, it's becoming of coming of a home theater. Now coming back to the BRICS, like if
Yes,
you look
sorry, but India and China home theaters have had clashes on the border. So,
true,
keeping that in mind, how will that? I mean, there's definitely an impact that everybody is talking about, and it's not just China, India; it's also Saudi Arabia, Iran, and other disagreements. Do
true,
you
true,
think
but
it
true,
may
but
not have a huge impact, but what is the kind of challenge and how to navigate around it going forward
look,
within the BRICS grouping?
look, Tulika, we have to look for the broader consensus and common goals, right? Even though we have a bilateral issues, right? Bilateral a boundary dispute with China. But if you look at the BRICS as a minilateral groupings, if you remember the 2017 Doklam standoff, it was the Xiamen BRICS summit that kind of diffused the Doklam tension, right? And if you look at even the Johannesburg, this BRICS summit, it is giving a kind of platform to the members countries. Now look at how India and Chinese President Xi and Indian Prime Minister Modi is meeting and trying to diffuse the tension. Then you would ask that why not China is supporting India's membership claim to UN Security Council, right? Then we have to go
I was
back.
coming to that. I was coming to that. This is the next thing I was going to ask you that, there's also the notion that China is openly the only one to
True.
oppose India's inclusion as P5 UNSC.
True, true. And what I term this as a kind of like, I don't call it a security dilemma, but I call it a power dilemma between that has erupted and kind of like infused in India-China relationship.
Power
Then,
dynamics are playing out, and this is
true.
something we can expect to see going forward in the next 5 to 6 years as well. And BRICS needs to find a way to navigate around it. But I'll come to you now, Dr. Hussain, and let's go to the 15th BRICS summit. And Bangladesh is present there. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was there. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi walked up to her, exchanged pleasantries. Chinese President Xi Jinping directly told her that Beijing would offer support against any external interference. China is also pressed for more cooperation in the Belt and Road Initiative. Does it seem like both India and China seem to be vying for Bangladesh's attention there?
No, it's not that way. But of course, I mean, it is not only Bangladesh. I mean, all South Asian countries have sort of presence by India and China. But there is some kind of competition. I would say it's very healthy competition. India and China are actually increasing their presence in Bangladesh or in other South Asian countries. But our relations with India, of course, are unique, and it is based on what we together achieved in 1971, our liberation,
Yes.
our independence. But eventually, the world has changed, and we have seen how different economic powers have emerged, including China. So we have seen even China has increased its economic presence in India in terms of its trade with India, which is now about $135
Mhm.
billion. So in Bangladesh, definitely we have multidimensional relations with India. On the other hand, of course, we have strong economic relations with China.
Okay, well, I'm coming to the close of this discussion, but very quickly, I want to capture both your views on the current BRICS summit, the declaration that has happened, and how do you see this new BRICS Plus is going to have an influence it's going to shape out in the next few years in the geopolitical trade context?
Okay, it is really important. I mean, there are different views. I mean, to me, actually, the way BRICS has, expanded. I mean, that might be called, as Professor Ranjan was saying, that BRICS plus. I mean, that was also in the discussion earlier. So it has definitely a sort of an impact in global politics, in the sense that BRICS plus countries or BRICS original members, they have their bilateral negotiations with the Western countries or many other countries, and this might help them in their bilateral negotiations, and it can help the global system. What I strongly believe today, that is, we are no doubt in a multipolar world, and we are seeing, on the other hand, a reality of Cold War. But this Cold War is in a multipolar world and is in a globalized world. So it's a very complicated.
Okay.
And I believe that BRICS Plus would help these countries as a collective group for their interest within the group and also outside the group, to bargain as a common voice, as a common platform on issues which are really important for global peace, for global security, and for public goods that we really want for all the countries.
So I see in a three part. One, that is the political, or what I call it, like the identity. There's a global south. Another one is the economic sector, which one is the BRICS main trust area. Security, I would say that if BRICS try to venture into a security realm, then I think that will be a kind of like complicating the whole matters altogether, and then it will be divided into a two part, and the Western narrative will be a kind of like fulfilling. So I would say that for time being, BRICS should halt its horses to focus on economy and a global south identity.
Okay, in which areas do you see the next best agreements coming from? Energy is at the top of my mind.
Yes, I think energy is you're right, and then I think it's health is also becoming one of the, and then green technology and sustainable development.
Question on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you rate the success of the 15th BRICS summit and why? I'll go with you first, Dr. Hussain.
Okay, thank you. I think it is successful in the sense that, well, it has been able to hold this summit, and it has already issued a declaration, a 94-point declaration. I have read all the points. These are really important for the whole world, and of course for the global south. And also the expansion idea is also good, because it is 5 plus 6, 11 members, and it has diversified. And I would say it has actually balanced the regions, different part of the world, as members of BRICS. Earlier, you were saying that it has become Middle East centric. I don't think. I mean, now it has become much more balanced. You have China and India in BRICS. And now you have Saudi Arabia, you have Arab Emirat, Egypt, and so now it is much more balanced. So if they can maintain their unity, and if they do not actually, travel into this so-called security or geopolitical arena, I think this will help a lot, because security is something where many countries have different threat perceptions. So this is not the business of BRICS. So it is rather to promote cooperation on issues that Professor Ranjan has indicated. I can add more agriculture, tourism, and there are many areas they can develop their cooperation.
So your rating in 1 to 5 is?
I can rate like 3 to 4 out of 5.
Okay, that's very positive. Rajiv, I'll come to you for the same question.
Thank you. As Professor has already remarked, that it's very hard to even measure up, right? And I will go with him.
Well, on that note, I'd like to wrap up this discussion. Both of my guests have a very positive sense about the future of BRICS. Thank you both for giving us your insights today. Of course, it's a wait and watch scenario, and we will wait and watch and see how the new countries and their equations shape up the future of the trading world. Thank you both for your insight.
Very much same here.
And for our listeners, I hope you're going back with a more in depth understanding of what really happened at the BRICS Summit this year. Do feel free to share your thoughts on my email tulika.bhatnagar@pressxpress.org or DM me on X, formerly known as Twitter and Facebook. Till we meet next time, it's Namaste from Tulika.